Welcome to the 5th week of Lent. Today is Sunday, and oh man, I cannot wait to talk about this gospel. How do we confront sin? How do we talk about sin? This is a huge problem for Catholics in the world today, for Christians in the world today, or really for anyone who believes in sin. We're surrounded by people who object loudly when they think that someone is being shamed or condemned for making certain moral choices. And a lot of this really has to do with the fact that we've lost a common moral language and common set of moral values. But regardless of why this is, the question for us is, how should we react in the face of sin? And I think people often go to one of two extremes, and we probably all tend to do one of these more than the other. At least this is my observation. On the one side, some people would say something like, don't judge, which really means there is no such thing as sin. I'll do whatever I want. Or some people tend to go to the other extreme and tend to demean and act hatefully towards people who make choices that we believe are sinful. And what I want to ask you to do is think about today's passage really carefully and ask, did Jesus do either of these things? Did he condemn and hate the woman caught in adultery? Did he say, there's no such thing as sin, adultery is okay? No. Well, what did he do? Well, he defended the woman. He stopped her execution by challenging the mob's sense of righteousness and their rule over the woman's life, also challenging the way that they understand and interpret the law of Moses. But he also told her to go and sin no more. Right? There's an acceptance that she has sinned. The question is whether she's going to keep sinning or whether she's going to be converted and turn away from it. And I think one line is really key for understanding this. When Jesus asks her, has no one condemned you? She says, no, sir, not one. And I think focusing on that word condemn is important, because that is the heart of what Jesus is saying we should not be doing. Does he say we should not recognize sin when it exists? No. He says we should not condemn people. So for me, this comes back to the old phrase, love the sinner, hate the sin. The problem is, how do we do that? How do we put it into practice? Well, this is an act of love. And love is hard, especially in a case like this where we can't just go all out. We have to approach these situations with a lot of the virtue of prudence. What is prudence? Prudence is the virtue that helps us to see the true good and figure out how to achieve it. So this means paying really careful attention to people and to circumstances, knowing when to kind of stand up, when to confront sin, and when to be quiet, and when to realize that now is not the time. This has really been brought home for me as I've worked as a hospital chaplain, because when you're doing that, you're meeting people at their most vulnerable, and you're confronted with a lot of things that you have to kind of set aside. You have to say, this is not the issue right now, right? If I go in to talk to a man who's dying of cancer, and he mentions that he's living with his girlfriend and they're not married, well, that's a situation of sinfulness, but now is not the time to address that, right? So prudence tells me to leave that to the side. So my challenge for you today is to ask yourself, am I loving the sinner and am I hating the sin? Ask God for the virtue of prudence. And I think this will help us know when to speak up and when to hold back. And God bless you, and have a great week.